Part 2, The Awakening. The chamber fell silent as the holographic figure faded, leaving Commander Jackson and his team in a state of stunned disbelief. The air was thick with tension, and the faint hum of the glowing object on the pedestal seemed to grow louder, as if urging them to act. "What just happened?" Ensign Rin asked, his voice shaky. "Was that an alien?" "It wasn't just an alien," Dr. Kale replied, his eyes wide with fascination. "It was a message. A warning. Or maybe even a call for help." Jackson stepped closer to the pedestal, his gloved hand hovering over the glowing object. It was small, about the size of a human fist, and pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. "This thing is the key," he said. "It activated the hologram. Maybe it can tell us more." "Be careful, Commander," Lieutenant Mira cautioned. "We don't know what it does." Jackson hesitated for a moment, then reached out and touched the object. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his suit, and the chamber lit up with a blinding light. The walls came alive with glowing symbols, and the hum grew into a deafening roar. "What's happening?" Rin shouted, shielding his eyes. "I don't know," Jackson replied, his voice barely audible over the noise. "But hold your ground." The light faded as quickly as it had appeared, and the chamber fell silent once more. But something had changed. The control panels along the walls were now active, their surfaces covered in swirling patterns of light. And the glowing object on the pedestal had transformed into a small, intricate device, its surface covered in the same alien symbols they had seen earlier. "It's some kind of interface," Dr. Kale said, his voice filled with awe. "It's responding to us." "Responding how?" Mira asked, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma cutter. "I'm not sure," Kale admitted. "But I think it's trying to communicate." Jackson picked up the device, feeling its weight in his hand. It was warm to the touch, and the symbols on its surface seemed to shift and change as he held it. "If this thing is a communication device, then we need to figure out how to use it," he said. "Kale, you're the expert. What do you think?" Kale took the device from Jackson and examined it closely. "It's definitely alien technology," he said. "But it seems to be designed for interaction. Maybe it's a key to unlocking the rest of this structure. Or a trap," Rin muttered. "Either way, we don't have a choice," Jackson said. "We need to keep moving. This place is full of secrets, and we're not leaving until we uncover them." The team ventured deeper into the structure, following a narrow passageway that led away from the chamber. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, and the air grew warmer the further they went. It was as if the structure was coming to life around them, awakened by their presence. After several minutes of walking, they reached a large, circular room. In the center of the room was a massive console, its surface covered in more of the alien symbols. And standing in front of the console was a figure, a humanoid robot, its metallic body covered in the same intricate patterns as the walls. "What the hell is that?" Mira whispered, her hand tightening on her weapon. The robot turned to face them, its glowing eyes scanning the team. "Welcome," it said in a calm, synthetic voice. "I am Ian, the guardian of this facility. You have activated the awakening protocol. Please state your purpose." Jackson exchanged a glance with his team, then stepped forward. "We are explorers from Earth," he said. "We came here to learn about this place and the civilization that built it." Ian tilted its head, as if considering his words. "Your species is not the first to seek knowledge here," it said. "But you may be the last. This facility contains the legacy of the progenitors, an ancient race that once thrived in this galaxy. Their story is one of triumph and tragedy, and it is now yours to discover." "What happened to them?" Dr. Kale asked, his voice filled with curiosity. "They fell," Ian replied, its tone somber. "Their ambition outstripped their wisdom, and they paid the price. But their legacy remains, waiting for those who are worthy to claim it." And what happens if we're not worthy? Rin asked, his voice trembling. Ian's glowing eyes fixed on him. Then you will share their fate, it said. The room fell silent as the weight of Ian's words sank in. Jackson felt a chill run down his spine, but he knew there was no turning back. We're here to learn, he said firmly. Whatever it takes. Ian nodded. Very well. The awakening protocol has been initiated. You will now be tested. Proceed with caution, for the trials ahead will challenge not only your intellect but your very humanity. The console behind Ian lit up, and a series of holographic images appeared, depicting different sections of the facility. The first trial lies beyond this room, Ian explained. You must navigate the labyrinth and unlock the secrets within. But beware, the labyrinth is not what it seems. What does that mean? Mira asked, her voice tense. You will see, Ian replied. Good luck. With that, the robot stepped aside, allowing the team to pass. The door to the labyrinth slid open, revealing a dark, twisting passageway. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, and the air was thick with an eerie, otherworldly energy. This is it, Jackson said, his voice steady. We go in together, and we come out together. No matter what happens, we stick to the plan. The team nodded, their faces set with determination. They stepped into the labyrinth, their suit lights illuminating the narrow corridor. The walls seemed to shift and change as they walked, and the symbols glowed brighter with every step. This place is alive, Dr. Kale whispered. It's reacting to us. Stay focused, Jackson said. We don't know what's waiting for us in here. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the passageway began to branch off into multiple paths. Each path was marked with a different symbol, and the team had to choose which one to follow. Which way do we go? Rin asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. We follow the symbols, Jackson said. They're the key to navigating this place. The team chose a path and continued forward, but the further they went, the more disoriented they became. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the air grew heavier. It was as if the labyrinth was testing them, probing their minds and pushing them to their limits. This isn't just a maze, Mira said, her voice strained. It's a psychological test. It's messing with our heads. Stay strong, Jackson urged. We can't let it break us. But the labyrinth was relentless. The team was forced to confront their deepest fears and insecurities, and the pressure was almost too much to bear. We can't give up, Jackson said, his voice filled with determination. We came this far. We're not turning back now. The team pressed on, their resolve unshaken. They were determined to uncover the secrets of the labyrinth and prove themselves worthy of the progenitor's legacy. But the trials were far from over, and the awakening had only just begun. Part 1, The Frozen Enigma. Commander Jackson stood at the viewport of the UES Stellaris, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the rusty red surface of Proxima Centauri b. The planet, often referred to as Planet Dirt by the crew, was a barren wasteland of ice and rock. But beneath its frozen exterior lay something extraordinary, evidence of artificial structures buried deep within the northern polar region. Final checks complete, Commander, Lieutenant Mira announced, her voice steady but with a hint of excitement. The shuttle is ready for descent. Jackson nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. This mission was not just another routine exploration. After 8 years in cryosleep and 6 months orbiting this distant world, they had finally found something that could change everything. This is what we came for, Mira, he said, his voice low but filled with determination. Not just another rock with microbes. This could be the answer to the question we've been asking for centuries. Are we alone? Mira completed his thought. Or were we ever? Jackson corrected, his gaze never leaving the viewport. The descent to the planet's surface took exactly 38 minutes. Jackson spent every second reviewing the scans, searching for any detail the ship's AI might have missed. The structure they had detected was roughly cylindrical, buried under 40 meters of regolith and ice. It was composed of materials not native to the planet, and its design suggested advanced engineering far beyond human capabilities. As the shuttle touched down on the icy surface, Jackson felt a surge of adrenaline. "Suit up, everyone," he ordered, his voice calm but commanding. "We don't know what we're dealing with down here." The team consisted of Jackson, Lieutenant Mira, Dr. Kale, and Ensign Rin. Each of them had been chosen for their expertise and resilience. Dr. Kale, the team's chief scientist, was already analyzing the data from the shuttle's sensors. "The structure appears to be intact," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "There's no sign of decay or damage. It's as if it was buried yesterday." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Jackson cautioned. "We don't know what we're walking into. Stay sharp." The team exited the shuttle, their boots crunching on the icy surface. The air was thin and cold, but their suits were equipped to handle the harsh conditions. As they approached the coordinates of the structure, Jackson felt a strange sense of unease. The landscape was eerily silent, devoid of any signs of life. "This is it," Dr. Kale said, pointing to a faint outline in the ice. "The structure is right beneath us." Jackson activated his suit's drilling equipment, and the team began to cut through the ice. It was slow, tedious work, but after what felt like hours, they finally reached the surface of the structure. It was smooth and metallic, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. "What do you make of this?" Mira asked, running her gloved hand over the patterns. "It looks like some kind of writing," Dr. Kale replied, his voice filled with excitement. "But it's unlike anything I've ever seen." Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. "Let's not waste any time," he said. "We need to find a way inside." The team worked together to locate an entrance, and after several tense minutes, they found a circular hatch embedded in the structure's surface. It was sealed shut, but with some effort, they managed to pry it open. As they stepped inside, the darkness was overwhelming. Their suit lights illuminated the narrow corridor, revealing walls covered in the same strange patterns. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was deafening. "This place hasn't been touched in centuries," Dr. Kale whispered, his voice filled with awe. Jackson felt a sense of foreboding as they ventured deeper into the structure. They were walking into the unknown, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice firm. "We don't know what's waiting for us in here." The corridor led to a large chamber, its walls lined with what appeared to be control panels. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on top of it was a small, glowing object. "What is that?" Mira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Jackson replied, his eyes fixed on the object. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." As they approached the pedestal, the object began to glow brighter, and a low hum filled the air. Suddenly, a holographic image appeared above the pedestal, depicting an alien figure with elongated limbs and a face that was both familiar and foreign. "Greetings," the figure said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "We have been waiting for you." Jackson felt his heart race as he realized the magnitude of their discovery. This was not just an ancient structure, it was a message, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. The figure smiled, its expression both kind and sorrowful. "We are the last of our kind," it said. "And you are the first of yours to find us. But be warned, what lies ahead will test the very essence of your humanity." Jackson exchanged a glance with his team, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. They had come seeking answers, but now they were faced with a mystery far greater than they had ever imagined. "What do we do now?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. Jackson took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities. "We keep moving forward," he said. "We came here to find the truth, and that's exactly what we're going to do." As the holographic figure faded away, the team prepared to venture deeper into the structure, unaware of the challenges that awaited them. The frozen enigma had only just begun to reveal its secrets, and the journey ahead would test their courage, their resolve, and their very humanity. Part 3, Shadows of the Past. The labyrinth seemed endless, its twisting corridors and shifting walls playing tricks on the team's minds. Every step forward felt like a battle against an unseen force, testing their resolve and unity. Commander Jackson led the way, his determination unwavering, but even he could feel the weight of the labyrinth's psychological toll. "We need to find a way out of this," Lieutenant Mira said, her voice strained. "If we keep going in circles, we'll never make it through." "The symbols," Dr. Kale said, his voice steady despite the tension, "they're not just decorations. They're a map. We need to follow the pattern." Jackson nodded, his eyes scanning the glowing symbols on the walls. "Kale's right. These symbols are guiding us. We just need to figure out the sequence." The team gathered around a cluster of symbols, their suit lights illuminating the intricate patterns. Kale traced the lines with his gloved hand, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This one," he said, pointing to a symbol that resembled a spiral. "It's repeated every few meters. I think it's marking the correct path." "Let's follow it," Jackson said. "But stay alert. This place isn't going to make it easy for us." The team moved forward, following the spiral symbol as it appeared on the walls. The labyrinth seemed to respond to their progress, the walls shifting less frequently and the air growing lighter. But the sense of unease remained, a constant reminder that they were being tested. After what felt like hours, the team reached a large, circular chamber. The walls were covered in more of the glowing symbols, but these were different, more complex, almost like a story being told through images. In the center of the room was a pedestal, similar to the one they had encountered earlier, but this one was larger and more ornate. "What is this place?" Ensign Rin asked, his voice filled with awe. "It's a record," Dr. Kale said, his eyes wide with excitement. "A holographic record of the progenitor's history." Jackson stepped forward, his hand hovering over the pedestal. "Let's see what it has to show us." As soon as he touched the pedestal, the room came alive with light. Holographic images filled the air, depicting scenes of an ancient civilization, the progenitors. The images showed a race of tall, elegant beings with elongated limbs and glowing eyes, their cities sprawling across planets and moons. "They were incredible," Mira whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "But something happened," Kale said, his tone somber. "Look." The holographic images shifted, showing the progenitors at war. Their cities were destroyed, their planets reduced to rubble. The images were chaotic and filled with despair, a stark contrast to the earlier scenes of prosperity. "What caused this?" Rin asked, his voice trembling. "Their own ambition," a voice said, echoing through the chamber. The team turned to see Ian, the guardian robot, standing at the entrance to the chamber. Its glowing eyes fixed on the holographic images, its expression unreadable. "The progenitors were a great civilization," Ian explained. "But they sought to control forces beyond their understanding. They created technologies that could reshape reality itself, but in doing so, they unleashed a power they could not contain." "What kind of power?" Jackson asked, his voice steady. "The power of creation and destruction," Ian replied. "They called it the Nexus. It was a source of infinite energy, but it was also a weapon. When they tried to harness it, they triggered a cataclysm that consumed their entire civilization." The holographic images shifted again, showing the progenitors' final moments. Their leaders gathered in a desperate attempt to stop the cataclysm, but it was too late. The Nexus consumed everything, leaving only ruins in its wake. "But they left this place behind," Kale said, his voice filled with realization. "This facility is their legacy. It's a warning." Ian nodded. The progenitors knew their time was ending, but they hoped that others would learn from their mistakes. They built this facility to preserve their knowledge and to test those who came after them. Only the worthy can unlock its secrets. And what happens if we fail? Mira asked, her voice tense. Then you will share their fate, Ian replied. The Nexus still exists, buried deep within this facility. If it is awakened again, it will consume everything, your world, your species, everything you hold dear. The room fell silent as the weight of Ian's words sank in. Jackson felt a chill run down his spine, but he knew there was no turning back. We need to find the Nexus, he said. And make sure it can never be used again. Ian's glowing eyes fixed on him. The path ahead is dangerous, it warned. But if you are determined, I will guide you. The team exchanged glances, their faces set with determination. They had come this far, and they weren't about to give up now. Lead the way, Jackson said. Ian turned and walked toward a hidden door at the far end of the chamber. The team followed, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The door slid open, revealing a long, dark corridor that led deeper into the facility. This is it, Jackson said, his voice steady. We're going to end this. The team stepped into the corridor, their suit lights illuminating the way. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, but these were different, darker, more ominous. It was as if the facility itself was warning them of the dangers ahead. As they walked, the air grew colder, and the sense of unease returned. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, but the team pressed on, their resolve unshaken. What do you think we'll find down here? Rin asked, his voice trembling. The Nexus, Kale replied. And the truth about the progenitor's downfall. And hopefully a way to stop it, Mira added. Jackson nodded, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Whatever happens, we stick together. We're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for everyone back home. The team continued forward, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. The shadows of the past surrounded them, but they were determined to face whatever lay ahead. The journey was far from over, and the truth was closer than ever. Part 4, The Hidden Threat. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls closing in as the team ventured deeper into the facility. The air grew colder, and the glowing symbols on the walls pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic light. It was as if the structure itself was alive, watching their every move. Commander Jackson led the way, his suit light cutting through the darkness. Behind him, Lieutenant Mira kept a firm grip on her plasma cutter, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Gar. Kale followed closely, his analytical mind racing to decipher the symbols on the walls. Ensign Rin brought up the rear, his nervous energy palpable. This place gives me the creeps, Rin muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. It's like it's watching us. Stay focused, Jackson said, his tone firm. We don't know what's down here, but we can't afford to let our guard down. Ian, the Guardian robot, walked silently beside them, its glowing eyes fixed on the path ahead. The Nexus is close, it said, its synthetic voice echoing through the corridor. But the dangers ahead are greater than anything you have faced so far. What kind of dangers? Mira asked, her voice tense. The facility was designed to protect the Nexus at all costs, Ian replied. There are defenses in place, traps, guardians, and other obstacles. You must be prepared for anything. Great, Rin muttered. Just what we needed. The team pressed on, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The corridor eventually opened into a vast, cavernous chamber. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, but these were larger and more intricate, forming a pattern that seemed to spiral toward the center of the room. In the center of the chamber was a massive, circular platform. Above it hovered a swirling vortex of light and energy, a pulsating, chaotic force that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The Nexus, Kale whispered, his voice filled with awe. Jackson felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the vortex. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a force of unimaginable power. This is what the progenitors created, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Ian replied. The Nexus is a source of infinite energy, but it is also a weapon. If it is awakened, it will consume everything in its path. So how do we shut it down? Mira asked, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The process is not simple, Ian explained. The Nexus is protected by a series of safeguards. You must deactivate them one by one, but each safeguard is guarded by a powerful defense mechanism. Of course it is, Rin muttered. Why would anything be easy? Jackson stepped forward, his eyes scanning the chamber. Where do we start? Ian pointed to a series of consoles located around the perimeter of the chamber. Each console controls a safeguard. You must activate them in the correct sequence to deactivate the Nexus. But be warned, the defenses will not make it easy for you. The team exchanged glances, their faces set with determination. Let's get to work, Jackson said. The team split up, each member heading for a different console. Jackson approached the first console, his hands hovering over the alien symbols. Any idea how to work this thing? He asked, glancing at Kale. It's a puzzle, Kale replied, his eyes scanning the symbols. We need to match the patterns. But it's not going to be easy. As Jackson began to manipulate the symbols, the chamber suddenly came alive with movement. The walls shifted, and a series of robotic guardians emerged from hidden compartments. Their glowing eyes fixed on the team, and they moved with a mechanical precision that was both impressive and terrifying. We've got company, Mira shouted, raising her plasma cutter. The guardians attacked without warning, their movements swift and deadly. Jackson ducked as a laser beam narrowly missed his head, and Mira returned fire, her plasma cutter slicing through one of the guardians with ease. Keep working on the console, Jackson shouted to Kale. We'll hold them off. Kale nodded, his hands moving quickly over the symbols. I'm almost there, he said, his voice filled with urgency. Rin joined the fight, his hands trembling as he fired his weapon. I hate robots, he shouted, his voice cracking. Focus, Rin, Mira snapped, taking down another guardian. We can't afford to lose anyone. Jackson moved with precision, his training kicking in as he fought off the guardians. But the sheer number of enemies was overwhelming, and it was clear they couldn't hold out for long. Kale, we need that console, Jackson shouted, his voice strained. Got it, Kale replied, slamming his hand on the final symbol. The console lit up, and the first safeguard was deactivated. The guardians suddenly froze in place, their glowing eyes dimming as they powered down. One down, Jackson said, breathing heavily. 2 to go. The team regrouped, their faces set with determination. Let's keep moving, Jackson said. We don't have much time. The next console was guarded by a series of energy barriers, each one more powerful than the last. The team worked together to disable them, their movements coordinated and efficient. But the strain was beginning to show, and the constant threat of danger was taking its toll. We can't keep this up forever, Rin said, his voice filled with exhaustion. We don't have to, Jackson replied. We just have to finish this. The final console was the most challenging. It was located on a platform high above the chamber, and the only way to reach it was by navigating a series of narrow walkways. The team moved carefully, their hearts pounding with every step. This is it, Kale said, his voice filled with determination. Once we deactivate this console, the Nexus will be shut down. Let's do it, Jackson said, his eyes fixed on the console. But as they approached the console, the platform began to shake. The walls shifted, and a massive, humanoid figure emerged from the shadows. It was a guardian unlike any they had faced before, a towering, mechanical behemoth with glowing red eyes and a body covered in armor. What the hell is that? Rin shouted, his voice filled with terror. The final defense, Ian replied, its voice calm but urgent. You must defeat it to deactivate the Nexus. The guardian roared, its voice shaking the chamber. It charged at the team, its massive fists slamming into the platform with enough force to crack the metal. "Scatter," Jackson shouted, diving out of the way. The team split up, their movements frantic as they tried to avoid the Guardians' attacks. Mira fired her plasma cutter, but the shots bounced harmlessly off the Guardian's armor. "It's too strong," she shouted, her voice filled with frustration. "We need to find a weak spot," Jackson replied, his eyes scanning the Guardian's body. Kale, meanwhile, was working on the console, his hands moving quickly over the symbols. "I'm almost there," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The Guardian turned its attention to Kale, its glowing eyes fixed on the scientist. It raised its massive fist, ready to strike. "Kale, look out," Jackson shouted, diving toward the scientist. He tackled Kale out of the way just as the Guardian's fist slammed into the console, shattering it into pieces. "No," Kale shouted, his voice filled with despair. "We were so close." The Guardian roared again, its eyes glowing brighter as it prepared to attack. But before it could strike, Ian stepped forward, its body glowing with energy. "I will hold it off," Ian said, its voice calm but resolute. "You must deactivate the Nexus." "How?" Jackson asked, his voice filled with desperation. "Use this," Ian replied, handing Jackson a small, glowing device. "It is the key. Insert it into the Nexus, and it will shut down." Jackson nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "Let's go," he said, turning to the team. Ian engaged the Guardian, its movements swift and precise. The two machines clashed in a battle of strength and skill, their blows shaking the chamber. The team made their way to the Nexus, their hearts pounding with every step. The vortex of energy pulsed with an intensity that was almost overwhelming, but they pressed on, their resolve unshaken. "This is it," Jackson said, holding up the glowing device. "We end this now." He inserted the device into the Nexus, and the chamber was filled with a blinding light. The vortex began to shrink, its energy dissipating as the Nexus was deactivated. The Guardian roared one final time before collapsing to the ground, its body going still. Ian stood over it, its glowing eyes dimming as the battle came to an end. "It is done," Ian said, its voice filled with relief. "The Nexus has been shut down."